Hi, friends. This is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and the Drogar campaign. So, at this point, Schleepy Horde, who is a dwarf ranger, has allowed these assassins to pass him by, right? And they're heading kind of a skew of where Drogar is running off to, which is Phandalin. So, I wanted to talk about this. So, basically, Sleepy Stony Horde, the dwarf Sleepy, the dwarf ranger, he has used a stealth. He used a perception and a stealth to avoid these assassins, and he's smart. There's five of them, and there's only one of him. So that's it. Like this group of assassins, this I put a lot of time and effort into designing them. I do, all I had a bandit captain. I had four bandits. I knew what weapons they had. I had named them individually. There was a lot of time and effort put into this. By making that perception check and that stealth check, what really blew me away was we ended up with a situation where it cut the time of the session by 1/3 to one half. And I actually only had an hour and 10-minute session, which was very short. I planned a 2-hour session, right? But I wanted to talk about this because I cannot stress this enough. Um, in Dungeons and Dragons, I take very seriously not railroading, right? Like the dice matter, player character decisions matter, and this means it can dramatically change the length of your session. Uh, and also it means like directors. Well, I think directors do the same thing. There's a lot of stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor, and this was disappointing to see this end up on the cutting room floor. These beautiful assassin women on five white horses, all in white gear. I had spent time on this, but it ended up on the cutting room floor, and I cannot stress this enough. Dungeons and Dragons needs to be spontaneous and wild and unpredictable, and it's important. It's really important that the dice matter and player decisions matter, right? You're not just telling a story. And so just wanted to call that out. All right, so at this point, Sleepy then gets to the point where he is going to. So I'm like, are you going to follow these assassins or are you going to follow Drogar? And he's like, I made a promise. I'm going to follow Drogar. So he follows Drogar, and he fails 2 rolls to catch Drogar, and then finally catches him on a third. So he catches him 5 miles north of Phandalin, right? And he comes out into an open space, an open hilly plains area, right? Like kind of uh, like wheat. Think of actually, it's not wheat. It's like tall grass. They're in the tall grass. There's a boulder, right, and there's some hills, right. But there's also this old pickled. Actually, yeah. So actually, I used the player character from the Essentials kit. There's these player character cards, and his name is Pickled Pete, and he's this old woodcutter, right? Who drinks too much, which that's I don't know why you got to call that out against Pete, but yeah. So he comes across Pickled Pete, and the point is, Pickled Pete is there, and he's just making his way up to the Neverwinter Forest, and he's going to help some of the woodcutters that are there, right? But what's really fascinating is Pickled Pete is right there, and when Sleepy Stony Horde catches Drogar, there's the possibility that Drogar could kill Pickled Pete, right? So when Sleepy finds Drogar, Drogar is digging a hole next to this boulder, right? And because of that, Drogar does not see Pickled Pete. Now, finally, Sleepy sees Drogar in full. What is Drogar? Let's talk about Drogar. So Drogar is a full size owlbear, large creature, right? So this thing is as big as a van, right? Think about a minivan. That's about, think of a full size white van. That paddled van is like, oh, nothing good happens in a white van, right? That's how big an owlbear is. They're huge, right? So, and then it's saddled, right? Because this was Gurnigar's mount. So Gurnigar's mount is a owlbear, right? Which is pretty wild. on Drogar is each side of the saddle has a big carry bag, right? On one side of the saddle is the spell book, and that's what the assassins came for, right? Was Gurnigar the wizard's spell book. It's still there. It's in the saddle. And then on the other side is everything that, like his tent and his cooking supplies and, literally everything Gurnigar owned, right? That's also pretty wild. Like adventurers, like they own what's on their back, right? Like that's it, right? That's like now actually they could have holdings in other areas, but they do actually. Yeah, I get their possessions are strangely limited to what's on their body, but there are adventurers who buy taverns or which that's a different discussion. But yeah, but I thought that was pretty interesting. But for Gurnigar, this is it. This is like he had a wizard's tower, but that was a long time ago, and he traded everything in for a powerful magical item. So at this point, Drogar is found. Drogar is an owlbear, and he's digging this hole next to this boulder. And then he's spending all this energy digging this hole, and in addition to that, he is then scraping his head against the rock, right? And so he has some blood on his forehead. And the reason why he's doing this erratic behavior is he's completely distraught. He's like, this is the first time in like 5 years that he has been without Gurnigar. And Gurnigar built a really strong relationship with this owlbear, right? So at this point, Schleepy Stonyhorn is there, and he needs to save Pickled Pete from dying, because if Drogar finds him, he will almost certainly just snap his head right off with that big giant beak. And he also needs to and then also he needs to calm Drogar, because Drogar is 5 miles out of Phandalin. If Drogar gets into Phandalin in his current state, upset and angry, he can kill a bunch of woodcutters, miners, children, Harmon Wester, like a lot of people, right? Like that will not go well, right? So he has to handle this situation. So we're going to cut it off there, and we'll pick it up with Schleepy next time. Thank you so much for letting me share this with you. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.